April 16, 1988. The quiet city of Tunis lay asleep under the Mediterranean night sky. But in one of those elegant seaside villas, history was about to change forever. A team of Israeli commandos had slipped into Tunisia, over 2,000 kilometers from their homeland, on a secret mission that would stun the Arab world to its core. Their target, Abu Jihad, also known as Khalil al-Wazir. The stage was set for Mossad's dangerous operation. But what drove Mossad to risk everything on a mission in enemy territory, and how did they escape without a trace? This is the story about the relentless pursuit of a man seen as Israel's greatest enemy. Keep watching as we uncover the full story of how it all unfolded. Born in 1935 in Ramla, Mandatory Palestine, Khalil al-Wazir lived through the chaos of the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. Like many Palestinians, his family was forced to flee. The young al-Wazir grew up in refuge, angry, determined, and vowing to return. By the 1950s, he had befriended a charismatic fellow outcast named Yasser Arafat. Together, they laid the foundations of Fatah, the revolutionary group that would later dominate the Palestinian Liberation Organization, or PLO. While Arafat became the politician, the face of the movement, al-Wazir was the strategist, the fighter, the general. He masterminded guerrilla raids, coordinated armed cells across the Middle East, and built the military infrastructure of the Palestinian militant forces. But it was his alleged role in attacks against Israeli targets, including the notorious Coastal Road Massacre of 1978, in which 38 Israeli civilians were killed, that sealed his fate. To Israel, al-Wazir wasn't just an enemy, he was enemy number one. The Israeli intelligence service, Mossad, has a long memory. For decades, they had hunted down the masterminds behind the attacks on their people. From Munich to Beirut, their operations had spanned continents. By the mid-1980s, al-Wazir was living in Tunis, Tunisia. It was considered to be a safe territory, far from Israel's reach. From there, he directed PLO operations, mobilizing fighters during the First Intifada, the Palestinian uprising that erupted in 1987. To Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir and Defense Minister Yitzhak Rabin, al-Wazir was the engine driving the violence. If the Intifada was a wave, he was the force that made it crash harder. And so, the decision was made. Al-Wazir must be eliminated. Planning began in absolute secrecy. Mossad worked alongside Sayeret Matkal and Shayatet 13, the finest of Israel's special operations forces. The challenge was immense. Tunisia was over 2,000 kilometers away, deep in North Africa, with no easy escape routes. The mission required precision, deception, and flawless execution. The Israeli cabinet gave its approval only days before the operation under the code name Operation Introductory Lesson. Every move had to be rehearsed and coordinated like clockwork. On April 14th, 6 Mossad operatives flew into Tunis from Europe using fake passports. They posed as tourists and businessmen, quietly blending into the city. They rented safe houses, secured vehicles, including Volkswagen vans and a Peugeot 305, and began mapping escape routes. Their most crucial task was surveillance. Disguised agents loitered in cafes, strolled past the villa as couples, even posed as delivery drivers. One operative, dressed as a woman, walked hand in hand with a fellow agent, carrying what seemed to be a box of chocolates, but inside was a silenced pistol. These deceptions allowed Mossad to inch closer to their target without raising suspicion. From their observation points, the agents studied Abu Jihad's daily routines and confirmed what Israeli intelligence had long suspected. He was heavily guarded, but at night the defenses around his seaside villa grew less. The Israeli Navy was lurking out at sea as the hidden lifeline of the mission. If the ground teams failed or were discovered, the flotilla was the escape route. Overhead, a disguised aircraft circled the airspace, prepared to jam local communications the moment the assault began. The plan was ruthless in its simplicity. A strike team of 8 highly trained commandos would break into the villa, while nearly 20 more stood ready in reinforcement groups to block roads or neutralize Tunisian police and military. Step by step, the pieces were falling into place. Tunisia was quiet, al-Wazir was at home, and Mossad's agents had everything they needed. And so, the daring plan was set in motion. The night of April 16, 1988. Just before midnight, 3 naval ships of the Israeli Navy waited silently off the Tunisian coast. From them, commandos in speedboats slipped ashore under the cover of darkness, disguised as civilians, including one female operative who posed as a tourist couple with her partner. The strike team gathered near al-Wazir's villa. Every local police checkpoint had been carefully mapped and avoided. As the clock ticked past midnight, the commandos entered the villa. Within minutes, they overpowered the guards and broke into the rooms. Inside the villa, Abu Jihad was still awake, working late at his desk. The sudden crack of gunfire shattered the silence. His wife, Intisar, known as Jihad, was shoved aside by masked men storming through the house. Al-Wazir reached for his pistol, but he never had the chance to draw it. The commandos opened fire in a fierce burst, striking him again and again. Reports later claimed more than 70 bullets tore into his body. To ensure the job was finished, one of the attackers fired a final shot at close range. In less than 5 minutes, the operation was over. The man Israel had hunted for decades was finally dead. The team vanished into the night as quickly as they had arrived. They regrouped and were already back on their ships, racing toward the Mediterranean horizon. Overhead, a disguised aircraft jammed Tunisian communications, buying the raiders precious time. By the time Tunisian authorities realized what had happened, it was already too late. The only evidence left behind were abandoned cars on the sand and footprints leading back into the sea. The assassination sent shockwaves across the Arab world. Yasser Arafat was devastated. In Gaza, more than 200,000 mourners flooded the streets for Abu Jihad's funeral, one of the largest in Palestinian history. Across the West Bank and refugee camps, protests swept through, the Intifada burning fiercer than ever. In Tunisia, the government denounced the raid as a violation of sovereignty, filing a formal complaint to the United Nations. Arab leaders criticized the strike, while the US and Europe voiced outrage in public. But in private, many Western officials admitted that Abu Jihad's death was, in their eyes, inevitable. For Israel, the mission was celebrated as a masterpiece of military execution. Yet the triumph came at a cost. Abu Jihad's death did not end the uprising. Far from suppressing the movement, it amplified Palestinian defiance. His assassination turned him into a martyr, a symbol of sacrifice in their struggle, and his memory became proof that even in death, influence endured. Amidst the outrage, Israel remained silent. For decades, the government neither confirmed nor denied Mossad's role, relying on plausible deniability to avoid international fallout. In public, officials framed the events in terms of national security, carefully sidestepping the controversy. It wasn't until 2012 that Israel officially acknowledged the operation. The government called it a precise strike against a man responsible for attacks on civilians, claiming it had stopped a dangerous enemy while keeping civilian harm to a minimum. Even then, the focus remained on the mission's tactical success rather than addressing criticism directly. The death of al-Wazir crippled the operational leadership of the PLO, but it did not end the Intifada. For Mossad, the operation was a demonstration of reach and capability. No matter how far, no matter how well guarded, Israel had shown it could strike its enemies anywhere in the world. Even today, decades later, the Tunis raid stands as one of Mossad's boldest and most controversial missions. It was a tale of a conflict where every action carried the weight of nations and generations. Which part of this Mossad operation surprised you the most? Tell us in the comments. If you found this video fascinating, be sure to like and share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe for more.